Let's talk about one of the most incredible units in American military history, the 369th Infantry Regiment. These were soldiers who had to fight two wars at the exact same time, one against a foreign enemy on the battlefield and another against the prejudice of their very own country.
You know, their story was so legendary, they didn't just have one name. Out there on the battlefields of World War I, they picked up a few different nicknames, and each one tells a piece of their unbelievable journey. Their French allies, the ones fighting right alongside them in the mud of the trenches, they saw how incredibly brave these men were. So they gave them a name that really spoke to their strength and resilience, Hommes de Bronze, which translates to Men of Bronze. But the name that really stuck, their most famous name, actually came from the other side. The German soldiers who had to face their ferocity in combat. Well, legend says they're the ones who gave them a name born out of pure fear and respect, Kämpfer, the Hellfighters.
So, what's the real story here? Who exactly were these soldiers? And what on earth drove them to fight with that kind of courage? Let's get into it. Well, they were the 369th Infantry Regiment, originally known as the 15th New York National Guard. And this was a unit made up almost entirely of African-American soldiers, with a whole lot of them coming from the incredible neighborhood of Harlem. Now, to really understand their story, you have to picture the America they came from. At the beginning of World War I, the United States was a deeply, deeply segregated country. Racial discrimination wasn't just an idea, it was a harsh part of everyday life.
But despite all that, when the call for soldiers went out, so many African Americans were eager to sign up. They held this powerful belief that if they could just prove their loyalty and patriotism on the battlefield, they could finally earn the equality and respect that was denied to them back home.
The reality, though, was just brutal. At first, many were flat out rejected from military service. And even after they were allowed to form their own units, like the 15th New York, they faced this intense, ugly racism. Not just from people on the street, but from other white soldiers, especially when they were sent for training in the segregated South. And that discrimination followed them all the way to Europe. After they arrived in France, the American High Command refused to let these trained soldiers actually fight. Can you believe that? Instead, they were stuck doing manual labor, digging ditches, and unloading ships. And get this, it gets even worse. It's shocking. The U.S. command actually passed around a pamphlet to their French allies called Secret Information Concerning Black American Troops. It warned the French about the supposed inferior nature of their own black soldiers. Unbelievable. But the French army, they saw things completely differently. They were desperate for more troops on the front line, and they welcomed the 369th with open arms. So in this really pivotal moment, the American command just handed the entire regiment over to the French. They were issued French helmets and weapons to go with their American uniforms, which created this totally unique fighting force on the Western Front. So finally given the chance to fight, the Hellfighters were sent straight to the front lines. And this is where their legend was really forged. They spent 191 consecutive days in the frontline trenches. Just let that sink in for a minute. That's over 6 months, straight, with no relief. It was longer than any other American unit served in the entire war. And all that time on the front came at a terrible price. The regiment suffered 1,500 casualties. That's the highest number of losses of any American regiment in the war. And yet, through all that brutal fighting and those heavy losses, they did something absolutely incredible. Not one single soldier from the 369th was ever captured by the enemy. They never gave up an inch of ground, zero. Their reputation for toughness was built on stories of insane heroism, and there's no story more famous than that of Private Henry Johnson. One night, he's on watch with another soldier, Needham Roberts, and they get attacked by a huge German raiding party. We're talking about 24 guys. Johnson fought like an absolute demon. He fired his rifle until it was empty, then he started throwing grenades. When his rifle jammed, he just started swinging it like a club. And finally, with pretty much nothing left, he pulled out his bolo knife and fought off the rest of the Germans to save his wounded friend. By the time backup finally got there, Johnson had somehow fought off the entire attack, all by himself. And they found out later he had suffered at least 21 different wounds in the fight. His actions that night earned him the nickname Black Death. For that incredible bravery, France awarded Henry Johnson its highest military honor, the Croix de Guerre. He was the very first American to ever receive it. But you know what? He wasn't the last from his regiment. In total, 170 Harlem Hellfighters earned that same prestigious award.
So when the war finally ended, the Hellfighters came back to the United States. And they didn't come back as laborers, they came back as one of the most decorated and celebrated units of the entire war. And wow, did they get a reception. On February 17, 1919, New York City gave them a massive hero's welcome. Thousands of people lined Fifth Avenue just to cheer for them as they paraded all the way uptown into Harlem, where the real celebration began, for them and by them.
But, the cheering eventually faded. The parade ended, and these soldiers returned to a country that, still refused to see them as equals. All the respect they had earned in blood on the battlefields of France didn't magically translate into civil rights back home.
But even though that immediate dream of equality didn't come true, the story and the sacrifice of the Harlem Hellfighters were never forgotten. In fact, their legacy has only grown stronger over the years. You can actually see that legacy today. It's literally built in stone at the 369th Regiment Armory in Harlem. It's written on the street signs of the Harlem Hellfighters Drive. And in 2021, more than 100 years after they served, the nation officially recognized their bravery by awarding the entire regiment the Congressional Gold Medal. The story of the Hellfighters, it's so much more than just a war story. It's this powerful, powerful testament to patriotism in the face of prejudice. And it leaves us with this question that still hangs in the air today. What does it really mean to fight for the ideals of a country that has yet to fully live up to them for all of its citizens?